Okay, here's your warm-up help for week 7. Make sure you copy down the problems. Please put week 7 on it with your name and your class period. Okay, number 1 was adding, subtracting decimals. First thing I look at is that last number. I don't have a decimal there, so I'm going to go ahead and add my 10 to it. Remember, when I'm adding or subtracting, I must line up my decimal points. Now I'm just going to subtract across. I cannot do 2 minus 3, so I borrow. 12 minus 3, 9. I cannot do 2 minus 6, so I have to borrow. 12 minus 6 is 3. Is 6. Why did I put 3? Bring your decimal down. 3 minus 1 is 2. 6 minus 2 is 4. And now I'm going to have to add that 10 to it. Remember, line up your decimals. And I get 52. I get 52 and 69 hundredths. Number 2, we're adding decimals again. Remember, put your decimal behind it so that you don't make a mistake. I'm going to add 24 plus 16 plus 3. I like to add a 0 there. As I add, 4 plus 6 is 10, plus 3 is 13. Carry it, that is a 0. 1 plus 2 plus 1 is 4, so my answer to this problem is 43. Here I'm multiplying and adding, so I know I got a decimal there. I'm going to go ahead and multiply 13 times 4. I get 52. And then when I add 52 plus my 14, I will get 66 for an answer. Number 4 is division with decimals. I have to make sure I line it up correctly. 4 2/10 is my dividend. 3 is my divisor. Since I don't have my divisor is a whole number, move my decimal straight up and go ahead and divide. 3 goes into 4 one time. 3 will go to 12 4 times. And my answer to this problem is 1 4/10. I'm adding unlike fractions for number 5. So first thing I have to do is find a common denominator. I'll put it in my sled. I'm going to find the LCM. So 2 goes into 6 3 times. 2 goes into 4 2. I'm done. 2 times 3 times 2 is 12. So my common denominator is going to be 12. I know that 6 times 2 is 12, so 4 times 2 must be 8. 4 times 3 is 12. 3 times 3 is 9. Now that I have the same denominator, I can go ahead and add. I get 17 twelfths. 17 twelfths is an improper fraction, so I must divide. 12 doesn't go into 1. 12 goes into 17 one time with 5 left over. Go clockwise. So my answer to this problem is 1 5/12. There's a couple ways I could have done number 6. Again, I like to simplify first, so I know that 4/6 can be simplified to 2/3. Just makes it a little bit easier for me. So when I'm subtracting, just like decimals, I like to line it up. I do not have a common denominator, so again, I need to find one. I put it in my sled. The only thing that goes into 3 and 5 is 1, so I'm done. 1 times 3 times 5 is 15. So now I got to find a common fraction or equivalent fraction of denominator 15. 3 times 5 is 15, so 2 times 5 is 10. 5 times 3 is 15, so 3 times 3 is 9. As I get this done, I'm going to subtract. I got the same denominator. 10 minus 9 is 1. Keep my denominator 15. 2 minus nothing is 2. So my answer is 2 1/15. Number 7, I'm multiplying fractions. I do not need a common denominator. There's nothing I can simplify, so I can just multiply. 4 times 5 is 20. 9 times 3 is 27. It's already in simplest form, so that is my answer, 20 27ths. Number 8, we're dividing fractions. Again, I kind of like to simplify my fractions so I have easier numbers. 6/10 simplifies by 2, and I get 3/5 when I'm dividing. Now, I happen to know if my denominator is the same, really I'm just dividing the top, which is 3/6, which is 1/2. But if you want to do it without simplifying, you would have 6/10 divided by 6/5. You would then keep it, change it, and flip it. Again, if you don't want to simplify, you would get 30/60, which again would simplify to 1/2. Either way, you're going to get 1/2. Number 9 was a word problem. Alicia wants to buy a camera that costs $228, including tax. She has already saved a $475 each week for the past 8 weeks. So I'm going to multiply 475 times 8. So 8 times 5 is 40. 8 times 7 is 56, plus 4 is 60. 8 times 4 is 32, plus 6 is 38. Bring my decimal over 2 times, bring it over 2 times. So at this point, she saved $38. But it's asking how much more money does Alicia need to save. So I take my 228, I subtract 38 from it. 8 minus 8 is 0. I cannot do that. I have to borrow. 12 minus 3 is 9. And 1 minus nothing is 1. So my answer is she needs $190, which is D. Number 10 was a word problem. Samuel bought 4 rows of tape. Each row contains 32 9/10 meters. So I'm going to have to multiply 32 9/10 times 4. So 9 times 4 is 36. 4 times 2 is 8, plus 3 is 11. 4 times 2 is 12, plus 1 is 13. Bring it over 1 spot. So that's how much tape he has. Now, each uses 1 2/10 meters, so I'm going to have to divide. I'm going to do this on the next page. Divide 1 2/10. I have a decimal. I move it over. So now I have. So as I divide, 12 does not go into 1. 12 goes into 13 one time. Get 11. 12 doesn't go in 11. Bring down the 6. 12 will go into 1/16 9 times. Which is 108, leaves me a remainder, which I don't need to worry about because he can't seal a partial box. So with all that tape, he can seal 109 boxes, which the answer is A. Okay, here's your adding fractions on the back side. I notice I do not have the same denominator, so I have to find a common one. So what goes into 2 and 5 is just 1. Find an LCM. So my least common denominator is 10. So now I want to find equivalent fractions. So 2 times 5 is 10. So 1 times 5 is 5. So 5/10 is equivalent to 1/2. 5 times 2 is 10. 3 times 2 is 6. So 3/5 and 6/10 are equivalent. Now when I can add that, I get 11/10. 11/10 is improper, so I have to divide. 10 does not go into 1. 10 goes into 11 one time. With 1 left over, my answer is 1 1/10. Again, I got subtracting fractions. This time I have unlike denominator, so I got to find a common denominator. 4 and 5, my common denominator is going to be 20. If I put it in my sled, I'll get 20. 4 times 5 is 20, so 3 times 5 is 15. 5 times 4 is 20, so 3 times 4 is 12. Now that I got the same denominator of 20, 15 minus 12 is 3, so my answer is 3/20. On number 13, again, I have unlike denominators. I put it in my sled. I happen to know my least common multiple is 63, so I'm going to find equivalent fractions. So now I'm going to say 9 times 7 is 63, so 8 times 7 is 56. 7 times 9 is 63, so 3 times 9 is 27. Now that I have the same denominator, I can add my numerators. So when I add 56 plus 27, I should get 83. 83 63rds is improper, so I want to divide it. 63 does not go into 8. 63 goes into 83 one time. I go clockwise, so my answer is 1 and 20 63rds. Okay, again, I don't have the same denominator. If I put it in my sled, I will get my least common one, which is 24. So 8 times 3 is 24. 7 times 3 is 21. 3 times 8 is 24. 8 times 2 is 16. Now that I have the same denominator, I can add my numerators. So 21 plus 16 is 37. It's an improper fraction, so when I divide it, I get 37. 24 does not go into 3. 24 going to 37 one time. Subtract, I get 13. So my answer to this problem, I go clockwise, it's 1 and 13 24ths. Again, I'm adding fractions. I don't have the same denominator. I put it in my sled. I know my common denominator is going to be 45. So I happen to know that 5 times 9 is 45. So 9 times 4 is 36. I know that 9 times 5 is 45, so 8 times 5 is 40. Again, I have the same denominators, so I keep my 45. I'm going to add my numerators. 40 plus 36 is 76. It's an improper fraction, so I'm going to put it in my division box, and I'm going to divide. 45 does not go into 7, but 45 goes into 76 one time. I subtract. I get 31. I go clockwise, so my answer is 1 and 31 45ths. Again, I got unlike fractions. I got to find a common denominator. I know it's my least common one is going to be 10. Now I got to find equivalent fractions. So 2 times 5 is 10. 1 times 5 is 5. So 1/2 is equivalent to 5/10. 5 times 2 is 10. 1 times 2 is 2. Now I'm subtracting. I got the same denominator of 10. 5 minus 2 is 3. It's already in simplest form, so my answer is 3/10. Make sure you turn this in to your teacher.